Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today's session with a little mental exercise. I want you to picture the last time you went for a full physical checkup.
Mhm.
You know the drill. You go in, you sit on that crinkly paper that, always sticks to your legs. The doctor comes in, listens to your heart with a stethoscope, maybe taps on your knee with that little rubber hammer to check your
The
reflexes.
classics, yeah.
Right, the classics. But here is the thing that always strikes me. If that doctor really wants to know what is going on inside of you, I mean, strictly speaking, if they want to see the machinery of your body, they hit a wall.
They do.
Or rather, they hit skin.
It's a significant barrier.
It is.
Yeah.
The human body is designed like a fortress.
Oh.
We keep all the important stuff, the blood vessels, the nerves, the organs hidden behind layers of skin, muscle, fascia, and bone.
Mm-hmm.
If a doctor wants to actually see your blood vessels or your brain tissue, they have to do something invasive. They have to cut you open or stick a needle in your arm to draw blood or, shove you into a massive claustrophobic MRI tube to use magnetic fields to peer through the wall.
That's the fundamental challenge of diagnostics. We're essentially a closed system.
Except we aren't entirely closed, are we? Because looking at the research we have for today's deep dive, it turns out there is a loophole in the fortress.
There is.
A literal transparent window where the body just decided, you know what, let's leave this part uncovered.
And that loophole is the eye.
The eye. Today, we are talking about the eye, but not in the way we usually do. We aren't talking about updating your prescription because you can't read the street signs anymore.
Right.
We aren't talking about contacts versus glasses. We are talking about the eye as a biological dashboard for the entire human system.
It's a fascinating pivot in perspective. Most people think of the eye as a camera, a separate device that just captures light. But medically, anatomically, the eye is an exposed part of the brain and the circulatory system.
Oh, say that again. It's an exposed part.
It's the only organ in the human body where we can directly view blood vessels and nerve tissue in their natural state, functioning in real time without making a single incision.
That concept actually blew my mind when I read the briefing. When an ophthalmologist or an optometrist shines that bright light into your pupil, they aren't just looking at your eye.
No.
They are looking through it. They are looking at a piece of your brain and a piece of your heart's plumbing just sitting there.
Precisely. And because of that unique anatomy, because the fortress has this one window, the eye becomes a snitch. It tells us secrets about your heart health, your blood sugar, your liver function, and even your neurological status.
And tells you early.
Often long before you have symptoms in those other organs. Yes.
It's the body's whistleblower.
That's a great way to put it.
But we also have a bit of a job to do today regarding critical thinking because there is the legitimate medical science of the window to the body, which is fascinating and life-saving.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is a pseudoscience version that sounds very similar but is effectively, magic tricks.
You're referring to iridology?
I am. The idea that the iris is a map to your kidneys or your spleen. We are going to separate the fact from the fiction later on. But first, I want to stick to the hard science. We have a massive stack of papers here covering everything from cardiology to neurology. Where do we even begin?
I think we have to start with the plumbing.
The plumbing.
The cardiovascular system.
Yeah.
Because the connection there is so direct and the implications are so massive for public health.
Okay, let's talk about the heart, or rather the blood vessels. You mentioned that the eye is the only place we can see them naked. I assume we are talking about the retina.
We are. The retina is that thin layer of tissue at the very back of the inner eye. It's the film in the camera, if you want to use that analogy.
Okay.
It captures the light. But to do that work, it needs a lot of energy, which means it needs a rich supply of oxygen and nutrients.
Which means blood vessels.
Lots of them.
Mm-hmm.
Tiny, delicate arterioles and venules. And here's the key concept for the listener. These blood vessels in your eye are not an island.
They're not separate.
They are part of the same continuous loop of plumbing that runs through your heart, your brain, your kidneys, and your toes. They are all the same system.
So if I have a problem with the pipes in my basement, I probably have a problem with the pipes in the attic.
Exactly. Systemic diseases that affect blood vessels don't discriminate. They affect vessels everywhere.
Right.
But we can't see the vessels in your heart without a catheter.
Right.
We can see the vessels in your retina with a simple magnifying lens.
So let's take the biggest killer. Hypertension. High blood pressure. We call it the silent killer because you usually don't feel it until you have a stroke or a heart attack.
Right.
But can an eye doctor see it?
They absolutely can. And the mechanism is really interesting. Imagine a garden hose. If you crank up the water pressure way too high for a long time, What happens to the hose?
It gets stiff. It gets rigid.
Exactly. The walls of the hose have to harden to contain that pressure.
Okay, that makes sense.
The same thing happens in your arteries. Chronic high blood pressure causes the muscular walls of the arteries to thicken and harden. In the eye, we call this arteriolosclerosis.
Arteriolosclerosis.
When a doctor looks into your eye, normally the arteries look like nice, red, supple tubes. But in someone with chronic hypertension, they start to look different. They get narrower. They reflect light differently.
How so?
Sometimes we call it copper wiring or silver wiring because they look metallic and stiff. The light reflex off the vessel is brighter and more coppery.
That is a vivid image. Copper wiring in your eye.
It indicates that the vessel wall is thick and unhealthy. And there's another sign called AV nicking.
AV nicking, what is that?
So in the retina, the arteries and the veins often cross over each other. It's just how the wiring is laid out.
Okay.
They share a common sheath at that crossing point. Now, if the artery is stiff and high pressure because of hypertension, and it crosses over a soft, low-pressure vein, it physically compresses the vein. It squashes it.
Like stepping on a hose.
Exactly. You could literally see the vein getting pinched right where the artery crosses it. That is AV nicking.
Wow.
And if a doctor sees that in your eye, it is a near certainty that the same stiffening and pinching is happening in the small vessels of your brain and your kidneys.
So you're sitting in the optometrist's chair, maybe thinking about whether you want the designer frames or the budget ones, and the doctor is looking at the back of your eye and basically assessing your stroke risk.
They are. In fact, these retinal findings are independently associated with stroke risk. If your retinal vessels look beat up, your brain vessels are likely beat up too. It's a direct correlation.
That is terrifying, but also incredibly useful. It's accessible.
And that accessibility is about to get a massive upgrade. We need to talk about one of the most exciting capers in this stack. It's about a technology called Reti-CVD.
This sounded like something out of a sci-fi novel. This is where AI comes in, right?
Yes. This is the application of deep learning to retinal imaging.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because AI is a buzzword we throw around a lot. Oh, my toaster has AI. But what is it actually doing here?
So traditionally, a human doctor looks at the retina and looks for those specific signs I just mentioned: nicking, narrowing, bleeding.
Unique stuff.
Humans are good at spotting big, obvious problems. But computers, especially deep learning models, are good at spotting patterns that are invisible to the human eye.
Invisible, like microscopic.
Microscopic or just incredibly subtle data relationships. The Reti-CVD algorithm was trained on hundreds of thousands of retinal images where the patient's health outcome was known. The computer analyzed these images, pixel by pixel. It looked at the curvature of the vessels, the branching angles, the pigment density, the width of the arteries versus the veins.
Things we don't even have names for.
Exactly. Things a human would never be able to quantify or even consciously register.
And it learned to correlate those weird little pixel patterns with heart disease.
Yes. The study compared this Reti-CVD tool against the current gold standard for heart disease prediction. In the US, that's the pooled cohort equation. In the UK, it's QRI-SES3.
Now, hold on. Those standard tests, the pooled cohort thing, that requires data, right? A lot of data.
It requires a lot of friction. That's a good way to put it. To get that score, you need to go to a doctor. You need a blood draw to get your cholesterol and lipid levels.
Needles.
You need your blood pressure measured. You need your family history. It takes time. It involves needles, and it involves cost.
And people hate needles.
Yeah.
And people are busy. They put it off.
Correct. So there's a barrier to entry.
Yeah.
But the Reti-CVD study showed that just by taking a photograph of the retina non-invasive, takes 30 seconds, no needles, the AI could identify people at intermediate or high risk of cardiovascular disease.
With what kind of accuracy?
With an accuracy comparable to the blood test method.
That is wild. So you're telling me that a photograph is as good as a blood test for predicting heart attack risk?
In terms of stratifying risk, putting people into the right buckets, yes. The sensitivity and specificity were often exceeding 80% in the validation cohorts. This is huge because it allows for what we call opportunistic screening.
Opportunistic screening. I like that term. It sounds like you're sneaking up on the disease.
You sort of are. Think about the populations that are hard to reach. Maybe they don't have a primary care physician. Maybe they don't have health insurance that covers annual physicals.
Or they just feel fine. They're a 45-year-old guy who thinks he's invincible.
Exactly. They ignore their health until something breaks. But almost everyone eventually has trouble seeing.
Everyone needs reading glasses eventually. It's a great equalizer.
Exactly. So they walk into a strip mall optometrist to get a pair of specs. They take a picture of the eye, which is standard now. The AI runs in the background. And suddenly, the optometrist can say, hey, your vision is fine, but this algorithm is flagging you as high risk for cardiovascular disease. You need to see a cardiologist.
That changes the whole role of the eye doctor. They aren't just the glasses people anymore.
What?
They're the front line of defense for the heart.
It turns the eye exam into a holistic health check. And frankly, as the technology improves, the eye might become the primary port for preventative medicine.
It makes sense. It's the path of least resistance.
Okay, so that's the heart, the plumbing. But the body is also a chemical factory. We had to talk about metabolism. And you can't talk about metabolic health in the U.S. without talking about diabetes.
It is the elephant in the room. Diabetes is so closely linked to eye health that the specific condition has its own name, diabetic retinopathy.
And looking at the stats provided, this isn't a rare side effect. This is a major issue.
It's the leading cause of blindness in working-age adults.
In working-age adults.
Let that sink in. Not the elderly. People in their 30s, 40s, 50s, losing their sight, their careers, their independence.
So what is the mechanism here? We know diabetes means high blood sugar. How does sugar in the blood blind you? It comes back to the vessels again. Glucose sugar in high concentrations is actually toxic to the cells that line your blood vessels, the endothelial cells.
It's corrosive.
It damages the walls. Think of it like a corrosive fluid running through the pipes.
So the pipes start to rot from the inside out.
They weaken. In the retina, this manifests in a few stages. First, the vessel walls get weak and start to bulge out. We call these microaneurysms. Imagine an old garden hose that has a little bubble popping out the side.
Not a good sign.
Then, those weak bubbles can leak. They leak fluid, lipids, and blood into the retinal tissue.
So now you have a soggy retina. The film in the camera's getting wet.
Exactly. And the retina needs to be dry and compact to work properly. If that fluid leaks into the macula, which is the tiny spot responsible for your sharp central vision, it swells up. That's called macular edema.
And what does the patient see? What does that feel like?
Their central vision gets blurry. Straight lines might look wavy. Colors look washed out. It's like trying to read a book through a layer of water.
And that's just the early stage.
That is the non-proliferative stage, the non-growing stage. If it goes unchecked, the vessels get so damaged that they close off completely. They die.
Okay.
Now the retina is starving. It's not getting oxygen. So it sends out a distress signal. It releases a chemical called VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor. It screams, grow me new vessels, I need oxygen.
Well, that sounds like a smart adaptation. The body is trying to fix the problem.
You would think so,
Yeah.
but the body panics. It grows these new vessels. We call this neovascularization, but it grows them too fast and too haphazardly.
They're not built right.
These new vessels are like weeds. They're fragile, they grow in the wrong places, like into the jelly of the eye, and they break easily.
So the repair job is worse than the leak.
Much, much worse.
Yes.
These new vessels can burst and fill the entire inside of the eye with blood. We call that a vitreous hemorrhage. The patient goes from seeing fine to seeing a massive curtain of darkness or a shower of black spots just instantly.
That is terrifying. And the worst part, from what I read, is that you can have the damage happening for a long time before you actually see the curtain drop.
That is the critical danger. You can have early-stage retinopathy, the leaking, the bulging, and still have 20/20 vision. You feel fine. You can read the chart.
You'd have no idea.
You'd have no idea. That is why we tell diabetics, do not wait until your vision is blurry. By the time it's blurry, the damage is deep and much harder to fix. You need that annual dilated exam so we can spot the bulging vessels before they burst.
It really emphasizes that the eye exam is a medical exam, not just a vision test.
Absolutely. And while we're on the topic of chemicals and metabolism, let's look at the liver, because the liver is another organ that loves to broadcast its status on the eye.
The famous yellow eyes.
Jaundice.
Jaundice.
It's one of the most recognizable signs in all of medicine. The sclera, the white part of the eye, turns yellow.
I think most people know that yellow eyes means liver trouble, but why the eye? Why doesn't your nose turn yellow first?
Well, your skin does turn yellow, but it's much harder to see, especially depending on your natural complexion. The sclera is naturally bright white, so it acts like a perfect canvas for contrast. Any change is immediately obvious.
That makes sense. High contrast. So what's the yellow stuff?
The yellow color comes from a substance called bilirubin. It's a waste product. When your red blood cells get old and die, they get broken down, and one of the leftovers is this yellow pigment, bilirubin.
Okay.
Normally, your liver scoops it up, processes it, and dumps it into your bile to help you digest food.
So it's a trash collector.
It is the body's primary trash collector and recycling plant. But if the liver is sick, say, with hepatitis or cirrhosis from alcohol, or if there is a tumor blocking the bile ducts, the trash collector goes on strike.
The bilirubin backs up.
The bilirubin builds up in the blood. It has nowhere to go, so it starts leaking into the tissues. And the first place you often see it is that bright white sclera.
So the eye is basically acting as a dipstick for your blood's waste levels.
It is. And the sources point out that doctors can even categorize the type of jaundice pre-hepatic, hepatic, post-hepatic based on other symptoms. But the eye is the first alert. It says, check the liver right now.
There was another metabolic condition mentioned that I had never heard of before. Wilson's disease. And this one sounds almost visually stunning in a dark way.
It is visually striking. Wilson's disease is a rare genetic disorder where the body loses the ability to process copper. So copper starts accumulating in the organs, the liver, the brain,
And the eyes.
and the eyes.
Copper toxicity. So what does that look like?
It forms something called the Kaiser-Fleischer ring. It is a brownish gold ring that forms around the outer edge of the cornea, the clear part of the eye.
A gold ring in the eye.
It looks like a halo. It's actually copper deposition in a specific layer of the cornea. If a doctor sees that ring, combined with maybe some tremors or liver issues, it is a slam dunk diagnosis.
Wow.
They don't need a complex genetic test to start suspicion. They just need a slit lamp.
It's amazing that a heavy metal can just sit there in your eye and show itself. Okay, one more metabolist endocrine one before we move on. The thyroid. I've seen this before. People whose eyes look like they are popping out of their heads.
Graves' disease. It's a form of hyperthyroidism.
Why does the thyroid, which is in your neck, make your eyes bulge out? The connection seems so strange.
It's an autoimmune reaction. In Graves' disease, the immune system attacks the thyroid gland, making it overactive. But, and this is a cruel biological coincidence, the tissues and muscles behind the eye share some of the same proteins as the thyroid.
So the immune system gets confused. It's friendly fire.
It gets confused. It attacks the fat and muscle inside the eye socket. Those tissues get inflamed and they swell up. But the eye socket is bone. It's a cave, doesn't expand.
It's a rigid box.
Exactly. So if the stuff inside the box swells, the only place for the eyeball to go is forward. It gets pushed out. We call it exophthalmos or proptosis.
That sounds incredibly painful.
It can be pressure painful, for sure. But the bigger risk is exposure. The eyelids are stretched so tight they can't close all the way, even when you sleep.
Oh, wow. So your eye dries out.
Severely. It causes something called exposure keratitis. The cornea, the clear window, dries out, gets scratched, and can even ulcerate and perforate.
So you could go blind from it.
You absolutely can. So again, you have a problem in the neck, the thyroid, causing a catastrophic structural problem in the face.
The interconnectedness is just wild. Okay, let's shift gears. We've done the plumbing, we've done the chemistry. Now I want to talk about the wiring, the brain.
This is my favorite section. Because earlier I said the eye is a window to the body, but for the brain, it's more than a window.
It's more than a window.
It's an extension.
What do you mean by that?
I mean embryologically. When a fetus is developing in the womb, the retina and the optic nerve literally grow out of the brain. They are made of the exact same neural tissue. They are just the part of the brain that migrated out to sit in the eye socket.
So, I'm going to say it again because it creeps me out slightly. When you look into someone's eye, you are looking at exposed brain matter.
You are. And that is why the eye is the new frontier for diagnosing neurodegenerative diseases, specifically Alzheimer's.
This is the holy grail of neurology right now, isn't it? Early detection.
It is. Right now, to definitively diagnose Alzheimer's, you essentially have to wait until the patient passes away and examine the brain tissue for these specific sticky plaques called beta amyloid.
Or do very expensive PET scans, which aren't used for screening.
Right. Not for the general population. But the research is suggesting the eye could change that.
How?
The hypothesis is simple. If the retina is brain tissue and the brain is filling up with beta amyloid plaques, shouldn't the retina have them too?
Does it?
The evidence is pointing to yes. Studies using specialized imaging things like OCT, which is like an ultrasound for the eye, and another called FLIO, are finding that these proteins do accumulate in the retina.
And they do it early.
They might do it years before the patient starts forgetting their keys.
That is the game changer. Because right now, by the time you have symptoms, the brain is already significantly damaged.
Exactly. The process has been going on for a decade or more. If we can screen for Alzheimer's risk during a routine eye exam at age 50, we might be able to intervene decades earlier. We're looking at changes in the retinal layers, a thinning in certain areas, and also changes in the blood flow that correlate with cognitive decline.
It's incredible hope for a disease that feels hopeless.
It is. And there is another neurological condition where the eye is essentially the first alarm bell, multiple sclerosis, or MS.
I've heard of this connection, optic neuritis.
Yes, MS is a demyelinating disease. Your nerves are like electrical wires, and they are coated in insulation called myelin.
Okay.
MS is the immune system eating that insulation.
Stripping the wires.
Right. And the optic nerve, that thick cable connecting the eye to the brain, is heavily myelinated. It's a big, fat, juicy target for MS.
So what happens when it gets attacked? What does the patient feel?
The patient, often a young woman in her 20s or 30s, wakes up and realizes vision in one eye is blurry or dark, colors look washed out like the saturation has been turned down. But the hallmark symptom is pain,
Pain.
specifically pain when moving the eye,
Pain on movement. Why?
because the optic nerve is inflamed and swollen. When you look left or right, up or down, the optic nerve physically stretches and pulls a little. If it's healthy, you don't feel it. If it's inflamed and stripped of its insulation, that mechanical pulling hurts.
That is such a specific, visceral detail. A doctor can just ask that one question.
It is.
Oh.
And statistically, optic neuritis is the first presenting symptom of MS in about 25% of patients.
A quarter of them.
So the eye doctor is often the one breaking the news that the patient needs to see a neurologist for an MRI of the brain.
And then there are brain tumors. This is the scary one. How does a tumor in the brain show up in the eye?
It comes back to pressure. The skull is a fixed container. It's a bony box. It doesn't stretch. If you grow a tumor inside it, or if there is bleeding, the pressure inside the skull intracranial pressure skyrockets.
And that pressure pushes on everything.
It pushes on everything, including the cerebrospinal fluid that surrounds the optic nerve. That pressure travels down the nerve sheath like a wave and pushes against the back of the eyeball.
And the doctor can see that push.
You see the optic nerve head? The little circle where the nerve enters the eye swelling? It literally bulges forward into the eye. The edges get blurry and indistinct. We call it papilledema.
Papilledema.
If an eye doctor looks in and sees swollen optic nerves in both eyes, that is a stop-everything moment.
Really?
That patient isn't going home. They're going to the ER for a CT scan. It means the pressure in the brain is critical and something is causing it.
It's amazing. The eye is basically the pressure gauge on the boiler.
A perfect analogy.
We have covered so much ground, but there is one more major system we need to touch on. The immune system. We mentioned Graves' disease, but there is a whole family of autoimmune diseases that seem to hate the eye. Rheumatoid arthritis, lupus.
The connection here is connective tissue. Autoimmune diseases often target collagen, and the eye, specifically the white part, the sclera, and the clear front, the cornea, is almost entirely made of collagen and connective tissue.
So if your body is attacking your joints, it's going to attack your eyes too.
Often, yes. About 25% of patients with rheumatoid arthritis, or RA, have eye issues. The most common is dry eye, severe, debilitating dry eye, like sand in your eyes constantly. But the more dangerous one is inflammation of the sclera itself.
Scleritis.
Yes. And I want to take a second here to do a real deep dive distinction that was in the notes, because it illustrates just how nuanced this can get. There's episcleritis and there is scleritis.
They sound the same. Epi just means on top of, right?
Right. Episcleritis is inflammation of the thin membrane covering the white of the eye. It looks scary. The eye turns bright red like a demon eye, but it's usually mild. It's uncomfortable, but it resolves.
Okay. And scleritis.
Scleritis is inflammation of the structural wall itself. The building's on fire, not just the wallpaper. It causes a deep, boring pain. Patients describe it as a drill boring into their cheekbone or temple. It wakes them up at night.
That sounds horrific. But if I look in the mirror, don't they both just look red? How do you tell them apart?
They do look similar. And here is the MacGyver trick doctors use to tell them apart. They use a seemingly ordinary eye drop called phenylephrine.
Isn't that in nasal sprays? For congestion?
It is. It's a vasoconstrictor. It shrinks blood vessels.
Yeah.
So the doctor sees a red eye. They put a drop of phenylephrine in. If it is episcleritis, the superficial wimpy inflammation, those surface vessels clamp down immediately. The redness disappears. The eye blanches and turns white.
So if the red goes away, you're safe.
Basically, yes.
Why?
That's a good sign. But if it is scleritis, those inflamed vessels are deep inside the thick wall of the eye. They are engorged and angry.
The drops can't reach them.
The phenylephrine can't reach them or clamp them down. The eye stays red.
So if the drops don't work, you are in trouble.
If the eye stays red, it means deep inflammation. And scleritis is highly associated with active, severe systemic disease uncontrolled RA, Wegener's granulomatosis, things that can kill you. It's a sign that the autoimmune disease is winning.
It's incredible that a simple drop can distinguish between annoying eye rash and systemic autoimmune crisis.
It is the art of medicine. And we can't talk about autoimmune emergencies without mentioning giant cell arteritis, or GCA.
The notes called this a true ocular emergency.
It is. GCA is an inflammation of the lining of the arteries, usually in the head and temples in older adults.
What are the symptoms?
A new headache, tenderness on the scalp, like it hurts to brush your hair, and jaw pain when chewing. But the visual symptom is terrifying. It's called amaurosis fugax.
That's a fancy Latin name. What does it mean?
Fleeting darkness. It's like a curtain or a shade being pulled down over one eye. The vision just goes dark and maybe comes back.
A curtain coming down.
If a patient describes that, we run. Because GCA can cause a stroke in the optic nerve. If you don't start high-dose steroids immediately, like within hours, to stop the inflammation, that curtain comes down and it stays down.
Permanent blindness.
Permanent blindness.
It's high stakes.
Extremely high stakes. The eye is telling you the whole system is on fire.
So I think we have established beyond a shadow of a doubt that the eye is a legitimate, scientifically validated window to the body. We can see the vessels, the nerves, the chemistry, the immune system.
The evidence is overwhelming.
But we have to address the owl in the room.
The owl in the room. I suspect we're pivoting to iridology.
We are. Because if you Google eyes and health, you are going to find all this amazing science we just talked about, but you are also going to find charts.
Oh, yes. The charts.
Colorful charts that claim the iris, the colored part of the eye, is a map.
Right. The kidney is at 6 o'clock. The liver is at 8 o'clock.
Exactly. This is iridology. And we need to make a very sharp distinction here for our listeners. What is the claim of iridology versus what we just discussed?
So everything we've discussed involves looking through the pupil at the retina and the optic nerve. Iridology claims that the iris itself, the blue, brown, or green part, changes its pattern or pigment in response to systemic organ dysfunction.
So a spot will appear if you have a problem somewhere.
That a black spot will appear in a specific sector of the iris if you break your leg or get a kidney infection.
And where did this idea come from? Because the origin story is, frankly, it sounds on a fable.
It sounds like a fable because it essentially is one. It goes back to the 19th century in Hungary, a boy named Ignaz von Petzli.
Ignaz, great name.
The story goes that young Ignaz was in his garden and tried to catch an owl. In the struggle, he accidentally broke the owl's leg.
A traumatic start to a medical career.
Indeed. And Ignaz claimed that at the exact moment the leg snapped, he looked into the owl's yellow eye and saw a black streak appear in the iris.
He saw a black streak appear instantaneously.
That was the claim. And he said as the leg healed, the black streak turned into a white line. He later became a doctor and built this entire theory that the iris maps the body based on that one interaction with a bird.
Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, owls are not humans. And anecdotal evidence from a startled child might not be the best basis for a medical field.
You would be correct. It's a classic example of confusing correlation with causation, if there even was a correlation. But people believed it. It became very popular.
So how do we know it's not true?
Well, when we apply the scientific method-controlled blinded studies, it falls apart completely.
Walk us through the evidence. Why is this pseudoscience?
Well, first, anatomically, the iris doesn't work that way. The iris is muscle and connective tissue. Its pattern is determined during gestation in the womb. It is phenotypic.
Meaning it's set, like your DNA?
It's like your fingerprint. In fact, think about modern technology. We use iris scanners for security, to unlock phones, to get into high-security buildings.
Oh, good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Those scanners work because the iris pattern is stable. It is a unique, unchangeable biometric identifier. If your iris rearranged itself every time you got a cold or ate a bad burrito or broke a leg,
Your iPhone wouldn't recognize you.
you'd be locked out of your phone every time you got the flu. The very basis of iris scanning technology disproves the central claim of iridology.
That is a devastatingly simple logic check.
And the clinical trials back this up. There was a famous study in 1979 published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association. They took a leading iridologist, Bernard Jensen, and showed him photos of eyes from 143 people.
And what was the test?
48 of those people had severe kidney failure. They were on dialysis, their kidneys were shutting down, the rest were healthy. The iridologist had to separate them based on the kidney spot in the iris. He failed completely. Random chance would have been about as accurate. In fact, he diagnosed 88% of the healthy people as having kidney disease.
Yikes. So he was telling perfectly healthy people their kidneys were failing.
And missing the people who were actually dying. There was another study in the British Medical Journal about gallstones. Same result. Iridologists couldn't tell who had gallstones and who didn't. They performed no better than chance.
So what is the harm? If someone wants to go to an iridologist and get a reading, is it just harmless fun, like a horoscope?
It can be harmless fun, but it crosses the line when people use it for medical decisions. We worry about two things: false positives and false negatives.
False positive is the anxiety, right? Oh no, my kidney is failing.
Exactly. You spend money, you get stressed, you demand tests you don't need. But the false negative is the killer. Imagine you have actual heart disease, which we know we can see in the retina, but you go to an iridologist who looks at your iris and says, your heart sector looks clear, you're fine.
So you don't go to the cardiologist. You ignore the chest pain.
And you suffer a massive preventable heart attack.
Yeah.
That is the danger of pseudoscience. It gives a false sense of security and can lead people away from real, life-saving medicine.
So, to summarize the distinction for everyone listening, look through the people at the retina. Science, look at the iris patterns. Myth.
Correct. The retina is dynamic. It changes with your health. The iris is static. It's your ID badge.
We have covered an immense amount of material today, from the AI detecting heart disease in the blink of an eye, to the copper rings of Wilson's disease, to the terrifying curtain of GCA.
It really reinforces the complexity and the incredible integration of the body.
If there's one takeaway for the listener today, other than don't break an owl's leg, what should it be?
The takeaway is that an eye exam is a systemic health check. I think we have a cultural habit of separating dental and vision from medical. We treat them as luxury add-ons.
Right. You get your medical insurance, and then vision is this little side thing you have to buy extra.
But biologically, that distinction is nonsense. Your eye is your brain. Your eye is your heart. If you are diabetic, hypertensive, or just over 50, that annual dilated eye exam is a non-invasive, low-friction way to check the status of your entire system.
It's the easiest preventative medicine you can do.
It really is. It's a 30-minute appointment that could save your life.
And I'll leave everyone with this final thought. We always imagine the future of medicine looking like Star Trek. You know, Dr. McCoy waving a tricorder over a patient and instantly knowing everything that is wrong.
The instant diagnosis.
We are chasing that technology. But it seems like we already have the port for the scanner. The body gave us a USB port. It's the eye. And with tools like Reti-CVD and hyperspectral imaging, we are finally building the software to read the data.
That is a beautiful way to put it. We're finally using the window for what it was meant for.
Go get your eyes checked, everyone. It might tell you more than just your prescription. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.